Welcome to the Say Hello to Your Therapist podcast. I'm Dr. Bethany Valenti. Join me as we say hello to Dr. Kimberly Richards, a therapist who specializes in working with anxiety, trauma, sexual abuse, and using EMDR. In this episode, we discuss our experiences with community mental health, how trauma shows up in ways that make people think they have something else like anxiety or depression or ADHD, working with different types of trauma, and how Kim explains and uses EMDR with her clients. I want to include a content warning because while Kim and I are energetic people, which will come across during our conversation, partly because we are connecting over our shared passions, but also our similar personalities, we are discussing heavy topics. So take care of yourself as you need to before, during, and after listening. A quick note that the views that we express in this episode are our own and are not a substitute for medical or mental health advice that you would receive from a professional with whom you have a relationship. Don't forget to check out the show notes to learn more about Kim and the things we talked about. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Kim. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here today. I would love to hear about how you became a therapist.
So interestingly, it was an accident.
Ooh.
My intention coming out of high school was to actually go into arson investigation. And I had been a volunteer firefighter and I had gone to the fire academy and taken courses and I really enjoyed it.
What? I mean, like my face is like, wow, I want to talk about that. Okay, well, go back to you.
So I went in as a chemistry major, and the poor woman who was the head of the chemistry department, I went to a very small liberal arts school. She saw me working extremely hard, and apparently I came up at one of the department head meetings because she wanted to know how to tell me that maybe this wasn't the career path for me. And
Oh,
so, yes. So the feedback that she got was that I'm excellent at social sciences and maybe just not the more kind of hard sciences. And so when I met
that's
with her,
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
so when I met with her, she as gently and kindly and compassionately as she could for a true chemist, shared this information with me. And
Okay.
so I literally was like, well, I might be good at that, but I guess I'll be a business major because you can't make money like with psychology, right? That was my
That
thinking
was
as
that was
a
your thinking.
freshman. And so
Baby
I
Kim.
ended up majoring in business and psychology, like a double major. And because I'm an overachiever, I also studied religious studies and art history as like a minor
Ooh.
and a concentration. Not sure in what order because that
But
was
like just
too long ago.
because it was
Just yeah,
interesting.
it was there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
it was
cool.
also like a challenge because the school was like, "Oh, you pay this much and you can take like 15 or more credits." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Well, my schedule says I can fit this in, so let's do it."
Yeah, let me
So,
get my money's worth
yeah.
if it's especially if it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how that went. I graduated. Right before I graduated, the department chair for the business department changed. So I actually, what had been put in writing that I didn't have to do senior research, she was like, oh no, you have to do senior research. So I went and dropped my major. So I graduated with a liberal arts degree with major in psychology, a minor, 3 credits short of a major in business, and then the other two. And I had an amazing professor who really encouraged me to go get my master's degree because forensic psychology was really coming up and it was a thing.
Mm,
So I
mhm.
applied to, at that time, there were only 3 schools in the US. One was in California, one was in Texas, and one was in New York City. And I have to be honest, California and earthquakes, Texas, and everything that could kill you in that state, um,
You
bugs,
know,
ants,
they got snakes, right?
scorpions,
You know,
snakes.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I was like, "I don't know about that." So I was like, "All right, I'll apply to this school in New York City," and I got in.
You totally like you didn't even go with the earthquakes either. You were like, no, because I was just about
No.
to say, like, California, the chances of encountering an earthquake is going to be lower than encountering maybe like a snake. I don't know. But you were like, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. So New York. It was New York.
So New York. So I apply, I get the acceptance letter a week before school starts. So I send a letter that basically says, hey, can I defer for your, because I'm like, I need more money to move to New York City. Like that's
Yeah.
expensive. In that year, I actually meet my now husband. So I'm like,
Mm.
well, now I don't want to move to New
No, no,
York
New
City.
York.
So I commuted to New York City for my master's program from Pennsylvania.
From Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Wow.
So did that, but my first semester was 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it was very challenging. And the school I was at was John Jay
Mm.
College of Criminal Justice, which is also
Mhm.
the Fire and Police Academy for New York. And
Oh my God.
it went from a very kind of packed school, you could barely walk, like shoulder to shoulder kind of thing, to wide open space between the people who transferred out because of 9/11 and
Wow.
over 300 staff and students.
Okay.
So that was a huge thing. That was a huge challenge to
Mhm.
kind of get through. And I was like, one day at a time, one day at a time, it's going to be fine. I made friends with the guys guarding the subway so they would stop checking me every time I got off the subway.
Smart.
I knew what
Smart.
train I had to get on, and I knew who the, because at that point it was the military,
Mhm.
who that was. So they kind of got to know me. That made that a little easier. Um, so I got through all of that, but that's how I ended up working in the prison system,
Mm.
which
Mhm.
which I had mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Off
So
mic. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And so I ended up there for my externship. And I was like,
Okay.
all right, well, you can't do anything with a master's degree. And I was like, do I
Mhm.
really want to do, like, which direction do I want to go? I really thought I
Okay.
was going to end up working with sex offenders and
Mhm.
part of the sex offender assessment board. And the more work that I did in the prison system, the more I was like, I'm not sure this is like where I want to be.
Okay.
And then it was like, well, if you want to do that, if you're going to do therapy, you have to get a doctoral degree. So so I
Huh.
started working in the prison. I was working in drug and alcohol counseling. I was encouraged, like all these people kind of fell into place to encourage me and set my path. And this wonderful woman, Miss Faison, encouraged me to take the state civil service test. And so in doing that, I ended up getting kicked over to actually the Department of Corrections. And ironically, I got hired for the Department of Corrections at the same time that I got admitted into grad school for my doctoral degree.
Whoa.
So I deferred for a semester because I had to go through the training academy, which is like boot camp.
Okay.
And so I couldn't do both. So apparently, you're not supposed to do a January start for this program, but I did
Yeah,
anyhow.
these days they do that. Yeah, it's the same. You got to start, with all that stuff too. Yeah.
Well, so I started in January and just signed up for classes that I thought sounded good. That
Yeah,
is
why
not
not?
how this program works.
No, they're like, you need prereqs. Yeah, this is not
They're
okay.
not even prereqs. They're like, here is like the agenda. This is how you have to take the courses. This is like the,
Yeah.
and
My
so,
program was kind of like that too.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the department chair was like, oh, and I was like, it's fine.
What
It'll
are you
all work.
doing?
Pretty much. Which he should have known at that point that I was probably the wild card
Yeah.
because I also needed to stretch out my program. And so I wanted to make sure I had enough credits for my pension with the state. So I had to stretch
Oh.
out my program. So my cohort kind of moved from dissertation into dissertation and practicum. And I was in dissertation, but I
Mm.
wasn't doing my practicum. And he looked at me and he asked me, and I go, oh no, that's next year. Like, just like we
Just
agreed
yeah.
on this
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was like, well, that's how this is going to work because I can't take
Right.
classes and do that. So it all worked out. I ended up graduating. I had an amazing internship.
Mm.
I stayed in community mental health for several years, and then I
Mhm.
switched to a gigantic, over 100 clinician group practice.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah,
gigantic. Yeah.
gigantic. And so they were kind of moving and doing certain things, but the requirements were so intense. And I was like, I don't have a life. And I
Yeah.
had an opportunity to join a different practice in New Hampshire remotely, and that was during COVID. So I actually ended up resigning from the ginormous group
Mm.
practice,
Mm-hmm.
joining this practice in New Hampshire remote, because every time they had a flare, we were good where I was. And then every time I was supposed to go up and see them because things were calm, my area would have a flare and they were like, no, no, stay home. So I
Mm-hmm.
never actually ended up going up there, and they ended up closing 14 months later.
Wow.
And so that was kind of like the branch breaking and like, you better fly. So
Yeah.
I pivoted and went right into private practice.
Wow.
So that is the long version of how I actually became a psychologist by accident.
Yeah, by accident. And then you went into private practice on the fly
Yes.
as well.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Would you say that it's a better fit for you now?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay. How long have you been doing it since you started? You said it was
Private
around COVID,
practice.
right?
So my practice was officially like founded with the state February 14th, 2022.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you.
Jeez. Yeah. COVID COVID did some stuff in the therapy world, didn't it?
It did.
It kind of shook us up.
Mhm. Well, and I think for me that was the pivot,
Hmm.
um, where I realized I could do private practice because I had to do everything from home anyhow. And I was
Yeah.
doing everything through teletherapy. And then I was doing all the billing and all the other stuff too that initially we had support staff for. And so I was like, well, if I'm already doing it, why am I giving like about half of what I'm earning to someone else?
Hmm.
So it made sense. And I really have a supportive husband who was like, you can do this, go for it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that was helpful.
Yeah, those supportive husbands, man, they really push you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it just yeah, because just contextually for anyone listening or watching that what you're kind of talking about there is you're giving chunks of the money that you're receiving to a practice. And
Mhm.
so and I talked with Amber about this in our episode, Amber Lida, about like for some people that's worth it because then you don't have to deal with insurance. You don't necessarily have to deal with like finding clients, all that kind of stuff. But if you're, as you were saying, doing all the work yourself, then you were learning how to do it on your own and still paying them maybe for getting clients at
Right.
that point.
Yes. Well, and the irony behind that was I was getting clients through them, but my
Hmm.
clients were referring clients. So I was already getting referrals directly to me.
Yeah, you had
And
a,
so I'm
yeah.
like, well, so I still have to pay you for my own referrals that I'm bringing in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see what happened there. So yeah, so 3.5 years later, a little over. Am I
Something
doing the
like that.
math right?
Yeah.
5 minus 2 is 3. Okay, yeah, I was right. Yeah.
Well, I was
Yeah,
trying to
three and
go
a half
like,
years
is it
later.
half? Like 10 minus 2, 8. So a little over three and a
Yeah.
half.
So have you always then worked with trauma and anxiety and everything on some level then?
I think so, because I think
Yeah.
it kind of just keyed into the experiences that I had being in emergency services, volunteering with the fire department and going from there, that I saw
Yeah.
a lot of that need. And ironically, when I went on my internship, I kind of got pigeonholed into two things. One was clients with schizophrenia, and the
Mm.
other was court ordered anger management.
Oh yeah.
And at one point, I had so many clients on my caseload who were struggling with schizophrenia that I remember going to intake and being like, I need somebody who just has worries. Like,
Yeah.
do we have somebody who's not so intense?
Mm.
Um, and they were like, okay, we'll try. And so I
Mm.
finally said something to my clinical advisor for my internship, because I don't think it's typical for an intern to have like an 80% schizophrenia population of their caseload.
At
Uh,
internship level.
and then the other folks were trauma. And so I
Yeah.
was like, well, if I can't have somebody who's kind of just worried, like, can I
Right.
have somebody who's higher functioning that's worried? Um,
Yeah.
so it kind of became this, well, you do really well with people with schizophrenia and you do really well working with trauma. And,
Hmm.
you know, the anger management piece never went away for
Yeah.
the
I mean,
court ordered kind of
the
staff.
amount
So,
of anger that comes up for both of those things is really
right.
like notable. Yeah. So
So
yeah.
it
Yeah.
kind of
So it
became that.
applies. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just incorporate some of that anger management in there. Yeah.
So eventually I was like, I kind of need a break from, and I really do have so many like curious questions around schizophrenia and what's actually happening and why
Yeah.
and how their presentations are similar and yet so different.
Yes.
But I was like, for my own sanity, because after 8 hours, I was like, but
Yeah.
are the walls melting? I don't think they are, but
I
everyone
don't
else
know.
seems to be thinking
Yeah,
that.
your own
So
connection to reality because you're seeing a majority of people that question reality.
right.
Hmm.
And so I kind of started to space those clients out across my schedule based on symptoms a little bit so that I didn't have, because that's a symptom set, is people who, feel like there's either bugs crawling on the wall's melting, there's faces
Hmm.
in the carpet. Like I was like, okay, like do we have some olfactory issues? Do we have
Yeah.
some auditory? Like who's
Yeah.
got what, and can we space that out so that I'm not getting inundated all day with the same thing?
Right.
It's similar with trauma where you don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to have back-to-back clients who have similar traumas so that you're not
Hmm.
getting flooded with those stories all day.
Yeah.
And I learned that way too early in my career, I think, which
Mm.
probably was a good thing. But
Yeah.
it
Really
also
helps you
taught
manage
me
your schedule really well.
how to
Yeah.
balance. Yeah, that
Yeah.
balance and that management piece is very important.
Yeah. Because it doesn't mean you don't like working with them. It just means
No.
that you're not having any processing time or like change
Yeah.
up time. I recall from my work in community mental health, which I loved, but the part that did not fit for me was just the like billing by minute
Hmm.
and that you like it was really you were scheduled, like you said, 8 hours, like back to back to back, and you might have lunch to do your notes. You might
Yeah.
have this, and because you were billing by the minute, you were supposed to do full 60-minute sessions. Ever since I was in that environment, I have not really gotten fully out of, like, a 60-minute kinda time frame.
Yes.
S My ADHD is like, "Nah, we still have 10 minutes." And that's before you get into the
Oh,
insurance billing thing, when they, like, tell you how long you need to spend time with your clients to get a certain amount of money. So
and the one practice I was at actually was on a 45-minute billing to that
mm,
38-minute code where, so it was 45 minutes, so you had 38 minutes, and then you had a couple minutes to, like, get them scheduled, walk them out, get your next patient, bring them in. So you were seeing 4 patients in 3 hours.
wow.
That was
Yeah, that's tough.
that was
And
hard.
and also, like, my recollection of that is a hallway of people with doors shut, and you
Yes.
just never saw people. Like, maybe you saw them walk in the morning, and I was like, "I'm doing the work that I love, that I've been wanting to do for all these years, and I love the work. Why am I kind of, like, sad?" You know?
Right.
And, so I it had to switch it up for my work-life balance in terms of fit, and some of that's, like, a system issue, I think, but
Mhm.
when you understand the system too of, like, we're trying to get as many people in as possible because the
Right.
need is so high. So what are you gonna do? I think that, yeah, a lot of people do sort of just check out after a while.
Well, I think that really contributes to the super high rate of burnout in our field.
Absolutely.
So I wanna say, I think it's something like most therapists, and I don't know if it's specific to psychologists or if it's just therapists, burn
Mhm.
out within the first 10 years
Yeah. Yeah.
of being in practice. And I think about, like, for psychologists, early career psychologists, that's the first 10 years of your career. And
Yeah.
how many of those folks are actually burning out in those
Mhm.
first 10 years and not getting to year 11?
Yeah.
because of the systems that are in place and
Right. And
how
sort of the expectations that are put on therapists and helping people of like, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Like, this is
right.
what the job is. And so what would it mean to maybe focus more on like the mental health of our mental health providers so that they might last longer and give better help instead of being exhausted? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious to chat with you a little bit about your trauma work. I know you said off mic that a lot of your people kind of tend to come in with like more anxiety, like, oh, I've just been really anxious and all that. And then as you're working with them, or even maybe in the intake, we didn't touch on that. Like it turns into actually, I have this trauma, this that really informs. Is that right? Am I summarizing that correctly?
So it really does, because I think what happens is a lot of people mistake hypervigilance
Mm-hmm.
for anxiety. And so it's that constant kind of like scanning your environment, making sure that you feel safe, kind of knowing who's doing what, which takes a lot of brain power and
It does.
it can be so exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But because a lot of my clients in particular I work with all trauma, but I have a lot of clients who had childhood abuse or childhood SA. And I don't know if we can say that. That's why I said SA. So,
Oh, yeah, you can say it.
okay, so
Yeah.
childhood sexual abuse. So those folks tend to feel like their experience is just anxiety. And they're
Yeah.
coming in because they're so used to kind of like scanning and trying to, am I safe? What do I need to do? How do I need to behave? And
Mm.
for a lot of people that they come in and they're like, well, I have social anxiety. And we start to talk about it. And I'm like, has
Hmm.
anybody ever asked you about trauma? And what's amazing to me is for a lot of my clients, they've been in therapy in the past and nobody's asked them, do you have a history of trauma? Have you
It's
experienced some of these things?
shocking that
And
people
they
aren't checking on that. Yeah.
and they've been treated for anxiety and they can't figure out why they're still broken in
Mm.
air quotes. And the reality is, it's not that they're broken, it's that it's not anxiety, it's this hypervigilance, it's the stress and the strain of trying to
Yeah.
ensure their own safety.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the beginning point of, okay, like, what are we
Yeah.
really looking at? And that
Yeah.
shifts things for them. And then, some of them are like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense now. And
Mm.
some of them are like, are you sure? Like,
Right. Right.
you
I
know,
don't know about this. It makes me want to go down a whole path of like it's bringing up all this stuff from like the trauma work that I do and the training that I got, that it's just such a rich, unique, kind of powerful form of work to be able to do with people, because you have some people, like you said, who have had childhood sexual abuse or something that happened when they were younger and they think they've moved on from it, but their body is carrying it. So you get into that whole the body keeps the score, which is a book, and a lot of us talk about. So that it gets stored, it can be stored in the body. So there's a lot of people who do somatic trauma work.
mhm,
And then there's one of the things that I thought was just fascinating about trauma, because so many people are like, oh, trauma equals PTSD. I think the kind of maybe general public would sort of assume that that
right.
could, when we're talking about trauma, it's PTSD. And one of the things that I take away is, there's also trauma unspecified, but trauma
Right.
doesn't necessarily always equal PTSD. It's how we cope and how we've made meaning and what has worked to like sort of get us to a certain point. And so it might have translated or coded into somebody's body as PTSD, or that could have turned into generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, or a phobia or something. What do you, I mean, does that sound
I
right
think
to you? Like you in the work that you do?
it does. I think the hard part, and I think what you're keying into is the folks like Bessel van der Kolk and Janina Fisher and those folks, they're the
Hmm.
two that I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
They were fundamental in writing the criterion for what PTSD is, but they
Hmm.
were focused more on kind of culturally at the time, what veterans were coming back with
Yes.
and
Yeah.
moving from that shell shock into kind of what post traumatic stress disorder is. The problem that we're now facing is that it doesn't quite encapsulate all of the types of trauma that we
Trauma.
really do have. So when you
Yeah.
have somebody who has been, let's say, covertly sexually abused,
Mm,
where it's more kind of lewd looks or comments or
mm.
non-sexual but kind of sexually oriented touching. So maybe not the genitals, but a mom running her hand on the son's thigh to see if she can get him to get an erection. That kind of covert sexual abuse. A lot of people are like,
Oh,
what do we do with that?
yeah. Do
It
people even, I
doesn't
feel like that's not
fit.
even known about, that would blow someone's mind to be like, wait, that's a thing? Covert sexual abuse.
Yes. And so the example, if I go really old school, so I haven't watched
Mm.
television in probably 10 years. But if I go really, really old school, I think about the way I describe it to some of my clients is if you ever saw Married with Children, which I really didn't like that show, but it's a good example because
Right.
the father would look at the kind of, I hate to say like sex kitten teenage daughter,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's kind of that covert underlying message. But I think what people miss is that mothers, unfortunately, can also do that
Do
to
it.
their
Yeah.
sons.
Yeah.
And so there's that piece. So there's an overt where there is, you know, inappropriate touching, all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So there's the overt. And I think more people are like, oh, that's what happened to me. The covert gets a little tricky because people aren't really talking about that piece. And
Yeah.
then you have things like, abandonment trauma where we're looking more at attachment, and that isn't captured with a PTSD diagnosis either.
Mm,
But we don't actually have something that really truly captures that
yeah.
unless you
Yeah.
start looking at kind of some of the personality disorders as more of attachment based issues.
Mm,
Again, that still becomes kind of problematic. So it's like,
because
did
of it's a personality disorder, like that we're coding it that way.
right.
Yeah.
But even then, like, then you get into that whole thing with the insurance where insurances don't want to cover those things. So it's like we're missing a chunk, I think,
Yeah.
diagnostically of what the broader picture looks like. And I know they've widened kind of the trauma categories with the DSM-5, but it still leaves so much that's lacking in that. So diagnostically, I kind of look at it and go, all right, what does my client need? What's actually the clinical picture? And so a lot of the majority of my clients are private pay for this reason because they're like,
Mm,
I need
I
the
don't want to
treatment that's
deal.
going to
Yeah.
work. The insurance, like, I don't necessarily need a diagnosis that the insurance company needs to have to pay for something or to choose whether or not they're going to pay for it. And so we kind of start to look at, well, what's actually going on? And how does that impact overall functioning in the everyday? Like, are you fighting with your boss all the time because you have a male boss and you have a bad relationship with your dad, and your boss is actually
Mhm.
kind of triggering memories of
Yeah.
dad subconsciously and it's creating all of this stuff? Or are you fighting with your girlfriends because of something? Are you like, what's happening? So those types of things come out
How
frequently too.
about also when you're still having to interact like with some of those people? Like
Mhm.
you gave the example of dad, like you're still having to see dad day in and day out, and that is what it is. It could be better, could be worse, could be like it really could be dependent on where that's at or the person has died. Yeah, it's very nuanced and very unique, which is partly why trauma work I feel like is a very, like I said, powerful and rich kind of focus to have to have as part of your clinical work. Yeah, do people even have words to put to that covert sort of thing? Like if they come in again, I'm just anxious, and then you're sort of asking about stuff, and how do you kind of end up finding out that there was some of that covert stuff?
So some of it comes out. I do ask a lot about relationships.
Mhm.
Um, so I have a postgraduate certificate in psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is
Okay.
that relational aspect. And so I
Yeah.
changed up my intake, and I really do ask a lot about what was your relationship like with your mom? What was your relationship like with your
Okay.
dad? What was their relationship like with each other? And so for a lot of
Mhm.
folks, they'll start to say things that they think are
Mhm.
normal.
Okay.
And so it's kind of, hey, you said this, could you tell me more? And
Yeah.
so in that telling me more, I start to go, what was that like for you?
Yeah.
Right? And
Okay.
and so oftentimes they're like, well, I didn't really like it, but that's how parents are. And I
Right.
was like, well, what if that's not how parents are? Right.
Yeah.
And so it becomes that part of the conversation and that starts to open things up.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, you were covertly sexually abused and we need to work on that. It's kind of
Right,
like,
right, 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 right.
how were you with this? What do you think about it? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that unpacking that takes
Yeah.
place. And sometimes it takes multiple sessions to get to that spot.
Is it ever
Um,
even like I have discomfort or problems with this particular family member or whatever, and I don't know why kind of thing? And then you ask maybe follow-up questions and some stuff comes up?
Generally, yeah. So some of my clients also have dissociative kind of spectrum issues.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
depending on where they are, I have some clients who are fully DID, and I have some clients who just have some dissociative tendencies. And so for some of them, they might like say something like, I really don't know why I don't like this person. And it's
Yeah.
because it's been
They
cut off.
yeah.
It's being able
Yeah.
to reconnect that. But in
Yeah.
other places, there are people who come in and they don't have that dissociative aspect. And they're like, I really don't like Uncle so and so. And we start to process, like, well, when do
Yeah.
you remember not? Did you ever like him?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, I
Yeah.
used to like him when I was little, but then all of a sudden, like, I just never wanted to be around him. And I'm like, that's
That
usually a
seems yeah,
sign.
there's
Like
something going on,
there's
yeah.
something going on. And it might be like as innocent as like he pinched you,
Yeah.
right? Versus that there was actual sexual abuse going on. So
Mhm.
it's kind of exploring that kind of thing and what does that mean?
Right.
And make
Yeah.
helping the client make meaning of that experience and what
Yeah.
that means.
Yeah. Yeah. I do wanna touch briefly, just in case our listeners are unfamiliar with this trauma, some of the stuff that's coming up is kind of the again, the uniqueness to the person and how it can present in terms of how they may or may not remember details of their trauma. So when you say dissociation, and then some people who aren't struggling with that, what I'm gonna say some things and then you tell me what what your take is or add on or whatever is kind of this. There's different responses that we have that our brains will go through:
Mhm.
fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is kind of the newest one in the research, right? Which some people as associated with that can respond to in specific ways to different types of trauma. So it may not always be the same, as well as dissociation is a coping where you just kind of like check out. It's this That's just a simple way that I would describe it. Your body is like, "No, thank you." Your whole self is like, "I don't really want to be here right now," so you go somewhere else. Other people have certain memories down to it's like like it's been recorded or just like stamped onto their brain, right? Like it's the amount of detail that they could have. And then sometimes I've had clients where they don't remember every single thing, but they have certain like triggers that like are really, really visceral because it's associated with the complexity of all of the trauma that they had, maybe in this particular relationship or maybe this particular incident. Am I missing? What do you think? Is that what how is that?
So, I mean, I understand and I'm following what you're saying. I think the way that I describe it to the folks that I work with is it's one of those spectrums. So, if on one
Yes.
side you have a full diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder, which used to be multiple personality
Mhm.
disorder,
Mhm.
um, and so you have different alters coming out and taking control of the body and doing certain things. So you might find things that are written in different handwriting. You might find clothes that are not the style you would normally wear or
Mhm.
things like that. Versus on the far other end would be like a highway hypnosis where you're driving and you get to work and you go, "Oh, did I stop at all the
Yes.
traffic lights?" Because you were kind of preoccupied
Yeah.
with your own
Yeah.
thoughts.
Like we all
And there's stuff in
dissociate
the
on
middle.
some level, right?
Right.
Like we tune out like you said.
And in the middle, there's other factors. So
Mhm.
it's this spectrum. And Janina Fisher did an amazing job. I'm crediting her because that's where I was introduced to it. So I don't know if
Yeah.
she borrowed it from anybody else.
Okay.
But she actually does have a spectrum where she talks about all these things and kind of has them mapped out and how it overlays with trauma and what that
Mm.
looks like. And
Mhm.
so I normally pull that out and share that with my clients so that they can kind of see and we can have a discussion about what does that look like and
Yeah.
is this something, you know, that they've experienced? I do screen for dissociation because I do a lot of EMDR. So the
Yeah.
protocols, if you have somebody who's more dissociative or a little bit different, and there's certain precautions that you do want to take with that versus somebody who's less dissociative. So I do definitely screen to see what's going on with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you ever, I have so many questions. I'm just like thinking of what direction I want to go in. Um,
It's all the directions.
all the directions. Because I mean, we talked a little bit about people coming in with anxiety, and some of the work that I've done with clients too is just to be like, yeah, that's trauma. Yeah, that's trauma. Get all like some people are like, maybe I'm just depressed. Maybe I'm just having sleep problems. Maybe I'm just, and it's just like trauma, 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 trauma. Like I have
Yeah.
this, when I was on internship, I had a supervisor who gave me this great, what do you call it? Illustration. It came from, I think, a workbook that she had. And so I will not be able to credit it whatsoever until I find it somewhere in
Mhm.
my office. But it's this like, it shows this image of trauma and all the different things that can branch out from it. So that could be
Yeah.
like attention problems, that could be sleep problems, that could be anger issues. It's like pretty remarkable. The You're about to pull it out. I'm about to just like lose it. That would just sort of make my day. Maybe you have your own type of version of it. I'm just gonna
I'm wondering, let me see if I can find it.
The motions that you're doing actually mimic what she had it on like a spiral notebook type of workbook.
Mhm.
Stop it. All right. It's a great visual.
I can't tell if you can see it. So tell me
I
if I
can
can
see
read it.
it. This is an updated version, I think. Can you bring it closer and then we'll try and get Look at that. Yep. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read this. So, just the visual, the title is Traumatic Events Leave Behind a quote, living legacy of symptoms. And then at the center, like there's kind of like so center sort of bottom of the page is sort of like an explosive word. It's like an, what do you call that? Icon, image, or whatever. Um, that says trauma. And then there's all these little branches that come out. So, I'll just go around decreased concentration, numbing, loss of interest, irritability. We'll come back. We said the anger management,
Mhm.
um, insomnia, emotional overwhelm, loss of a sense of the future, hopelessness, shame, worthlessness, few or no memories, nightmares, flashbacks, hypervigilance, mistrust, anxiety, panic attacks, chronic pain, headaches. We're almost done. I'm sure your arms are getting tired. Substance abuse, eating disorders, feeling unreal or out of body, self destructive behavior, loss of sense of who I am. So, identity stuff too, right?
Yes,
Did I get them all? And I think I got
I
them all.
think so.
I think
Yeah.
so. So, so much of that on that list can be as a result, like people, I'm anxious. Like there's just things like I have sleep issues, my memory, like, maybe I have, it's just, I so appreciate that. You just made my day.
And I will share it's the living legacy of trauma flip chart.
From again, was that Janina Fisher?
Janina Fisher.
All right, Janina, I gotta find you. Okay.
I think
Make
it's one of
friends.
my I actually have the old one too, but this is the updated
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Um,
The one that my supervisor at the time had, it was straight paper, if I recall correctly, and it was bigger. So you have an updated one from this.
it's this
Stop.
one.
That's it. Psychoeducational aids for people who are working in trauma. Yeah.
So
And
that was the old school original, and then she made it
that's
color.
it. That's what I have. That's him.
And she has a quote on it. Trauma
Yeah.
survivors have symptoms instead of memories.
I've always
Because
loved that quote. Yeah.
yeah.
They have symptoms instead of memories. Yeah.
And I think for a lot of my clients in particular, that quote resonates because
Hmm.
it makes it make more sense. And then,
Yes.
so going old school for a second, here's that dissociative continuum
Continuum. Okay.
where
Yeah.
you
You want to
get
bring
that
that
kind of
closer?
highway hypnosis all the way over to like a full DID.
DID.
A
Okay.
lot in between. Um,
Mm. Okay. Cool.
so yeah,
Thank you, Kim.
you're
Yeah.
welcome.
I think again, yeah. So that means that whoever's coming in may not be coming in with like awareness of trauma, or even if they're coming in being like, yeah, I know this thing happened to me, but I don't know why it's bothering me so much, or like I don't, I don't, or they don't even know how profoundly it impacts them, kind of thing. Did you find that as well?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
So I have some clients who come in and they think they're just struggling with like, impatience at work.
Yeah.
And as we start to kind of unpack what's happening, all these other things start to kind of show up. Or I do have a lot of clients who come in with, I think I might have ADHD,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Which, what's so hard about that is that people who have ADHD can also be traumatized,
Correct.
like they can also go through some stuff. So that's hard to tease out. That's hard to
It
kind
is.
of, yeah.
And so I do use screeners, and I will do an ADHD screener, and I do the PCL, which is for trauma.
Mhm.
And so I kind of compare, like, what are you endorsing over here that you're also endorsing over here? And how much of what your ADHD symptoms look like are overlapping with that trauma? And what's the impact, and how does it kind of show up in life to
Yeah.
really help differentiate what is it? And for some of my clients, it's genuinely both.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes a little more complex in terms of treatment planning of
Yeah.
we're working on these skills to help manage the actual ADHD, and we're working on processing these things, that past experiences that are impacting your current behavior. And so it becomes a little more complex, but still doable.
Mhm. Mhm. I also am thinking that for some people, I know it'll be recommended, like we can't really say until you've gotten maybe some treatment for the trauma, and then we'll come back to it. Do you do
Mhm.
that as well? It sounds like you
Yeah.
try and tailor it as much as you can even before that, but that's like we just can't really say because of
Well, and I think for me, my approach is meeting the client where they are
yeah.
and figuring out kind of like, okay, what's the thing that's bothering you the most?
How can
How
we
do
help
we
you with
get you
that?
some relief? And
Mhm.
by the way, do you want to work on these things? And some of my clients are like, absolutely not. And some of my clients are like, yeah, but I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Right. That comes up frequently of like, you know, I don't want to go back to that pain. And so some of it's like, you've already been through the actual pain. What if we healed it so you don't have to keep carrying it?
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Oh, that's a different way to look at it." You
Mhm.
know, um, can we move through some of those things
Yeah.
and heal them versus stuffing them down or kind of pushing them away or ignoring them completely or drinking to avoid them or, eating to avoid them or any of these other things, excessive
Yeah.
exercise to avoid, running away from things. And so that comes up frequently too. So it is a challenge because people are like, "Well, what exactly do you work with?" And I'm like, "Well, all of this stuff that we just went
Right.
over in that
Yeah.
circle," because
Yeah.
that's how people present, and they may or may not
Right.
have those memories of what happened,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it's kind of through some of that questioning of like, well, where do you think that came from? Have you ever experienced that before?
Mhm.
And, you know, sometimes they're like, oh no. And then they might come back 2 or 3 weeks later and say, I know we haven't talked about this for the last couple of sessions, but
Yeah.
you said, and I'm like, well, how many sessions ago and what did I say?
And what did I say? Oh my gosh, the times where they're like, when you said this, and then what I said is not what they said, but it's how they like
Heard
took
it.
it, like or how they heard it, how they've like reflected on it since then. Like, I think sometimes it'll just be like, how you told me this? And I was like, I think I just asked a question. And then, like it's fascinating what we take away from the relationship. For those who think that therapists just listen or just talk to people all day, there's like some responsibility there,
Right.
a lot of responsibility. So again, there's so many different ways I could go, and I just want to talk to you forever. You've just like made my day. I think the only thing
Thank you.
is that I would kind of touch on is that you made me think of is when I'm trying to like list out my specialties, like trauma is on my list, but I like so much else that I work with, I think overlaps with it, that I think some people like forget to even like when I'm telling people what I do, I'll almost forget about it. But I'm like, no, no, no. I really love like working with people who've experienced trauma, but it often comes up because I work with grief, I work with eating disorders, and I work with anxiety and perfectionism. Like, like again, that little trauma that was like several of those branches,
Right.
It's just like,
Exactly.
actually, what are we working with when it comes down to it? So you touched on EMDR. I'm excited to talk about it. Are you
Okay.
excited to talk about it?
I love EMDR.
Oh, so that's a yes. Okay.
Like,
So you do it and you do it exclusively virtually. Well, unless you're doing
pretty
intensives. You told
much.
me. Okay.
I have
Okay.
one client who I do an intensive with. There's a medical reason for that.
Okay.
So, um, the the kind of online virtual EMDR requires visual or auditory cueing or both. And so I actually have a specific platform that is amazing. Uh,
Mhm. I've seen it in like a training. I didn't, it was like after COVID, but and it's like the little thing. You could pick the background, right? And you could
mhm.
pick the little person. Like in the training, I saw like this person pick like this like fjord kind of like water thing. And then they picked like a little dragon that moved back and forth. Like a little,
So mine's not quite that high tech
okay.
because my
Sorry.
that's okay. So part of it is I don't, because a lot of my clients have attentional issues, I don't actually want the extra stimuli.
Okay.
So mine is more of, you can pick your color for the background
Mm.
screen, and then you can pick, I think there's like, I feel like it's the Lucky Charms version. I think it's like a
So
round
cute.
ball, a flower, or a clover,
Yeah.
like a star, a heart.
I like
I don't
Lucky
remember what
Charms.
else is on there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you can pick the color of that, the
Yeah.
size, this, you can adjust the speed and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
The direction that it's the ball is called the bilateral stimulation. So whether it's left to right or whether it's north to south and you're moving your
Mhm.
eyes kind of up and down, or there's one that's like a figure eight, um,
Oh.
which right. And I'm like, I don't know about that one for
I
me.
know. I've never seen that. Yeah,
And then
same.
diagonally. So you
Oh,
can pick
okay.
which diagonal you want to use. And so it depends. So there's a lot of options with it, but it comes on, you have your whole video processing. And then when you turn on the EMDR portion, which is the part I really love, is we can be having conversation and kind of figure out, oh, this is what we need to process and kind of pop into it, turn it on because it's fully integrated. And for the client side, the screen goes to whatever that background color is. So for today, we'll say like burgundy. And then
Mm,
let's say the ball is like white or beige. Like they'll see that burgundy and then white. I kind of disappear off the screen. On my end, there's like a control panel. So I'm up here, the client's here, the bilateral stimulation, there's things here, the control panel's over here for all the things to change out. If I need to add in auditory, when I do auditory with folks, I do ask them to have headphones if they can,
mm,
just to
mhm.
get that,
Yeah,
you know,
stimulation.
alternating beat kind of sound. I think it does work without it, but I think it's helpful with the headphones.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's a huge part of it. And now the interesting thing is because I had clients who were in person and I was using the tappers, which are like little buzzers
Yeah.
that you would hold in your hands and it would vibrate alternatingly. And the folks who were doing that were getting great results. But when we switched and I went to kind of the visual, the results were so much more powerful. And the
Oh,
feedback that I was getting from those clients was, it was good in your office and I didn't like the change, but this is so much better.
wow.
And so it was
Okay.
very interesting. And that lines up with the research that the eye movements really kind of are like the gold standard in a way
Wow. Okay. That's good to
and what
know.
we're
So,
finding.
fun fact about me, I was going to do the week-long training like at the beginning of this month, like almost a month ago. And then my husband got surgery and my kids got sick. So I rescheduled for December. So I'm more fresh to this than I would like to be, but I've know of EMDR a little bit. How do you like to explain it to people or suggest it to people when you're working?
So my routine way of explaining EMDR, and I should probably add this to my website now that I'm thinking about it because they say it all the time. But if you think about a a big stock pot on the front burner of the stove and it's just boiling and it's almost like to the point where it's boiling over all of this stuff that's just churning, right?
Mhm.
EMDR takes that, walks up, turns the burner off with pot holders, picks up that pot and moves it to the back burner. So it creates distance. It takes the heat down. And over time, right, it drops the heat pretty significantly, pretty quickly. But over time, that whole the water being the emotion, it kind of settles it. It cools it down. But the pot is the memory. The memory is still there. There's distance. It's on the back burner. So there's that space. It's not coming up and impacting your life all the time, but it's also not bubbling over. So the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of the emotion has settled. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how I explain EMDR.
Yeah, no, I love it. Is your brain the stove top?
Um,
Or am
I
I
mean,
taking it too far?
I hadn't thought about that, but I kind of feel like, yeah, because if you
Because
think about
like the
it, in
pot's
some
still
ways,
there and
the
you're
pot's
setting it.
still there.
Yeah.
But and it's interesting that you say that because maybe I knew this and just never put words to it. But what we're really doing in EMDR is taking some of that heightened emotional memory piece because it is the emotional memory, and we're reprocessing it and we're being able to connect it with your prefrontal cortex, like your what I call like your forehead V8 moment where you
Oh
can
my
think
God.
and make decisions.
I had
Right.
a V8. Oh, you don't even know what that just did to me. Okay. Oh, no,
You have
I
to tell me
remember those
later.
commercials. My mom used to do that. She would be like, "Ah, could have had a V8" when she like forgot stuff.
Well, like, I always think of, like, they were always smacking their head.
Yes.
It does, right? And so it's kind of like when you think about it, in moving it from that front burner, the limbic system, into that back burner or, that prefrontal cortex, it's a similar thing where now you have words, you have language, you can actually talk about what happened if you need to versus just being flooded with the emotion of it.
Mhm.
So in this instance, I think, yes, we could say that the stove is the brain.
It's the brain. Yeah. I always love a good metaphor. I'm always like, so then I'm like, so are you the oven? Okay, so that's how you like to explain it. How do you like to explain if someone were to be like, but like how? Are you most of the clients like that you get kind of familiar with it already, or do you have to sort of sell them on like, hey, you're gonna be moving your eyes back and forth on this thing?
Most of my clients are pretty familiar with it. A lot of my clients actually come to me for EMDR in particular. So the majority of them have some level of awareness, I think, of what EMDR is. And initially, when I started, a lot of people really didn't know what it was. And now a lot more people do. So,
Mhm.
but if it's like, well, how does it actually work? The the honest answer is we're not 100% sure.
Thank
That's
you
the
for
honest
saying that.
answer.
Yeah, the honest answer is we don't really know why it works. We just know it works really damn well.
Right. And what we do know is that when we do EMDR, it lights up the same areas of the brain that light up during REM sleep. And so when you're reprocessing things at night in your dream state, it seems like it's doing the same work that EMDR is doing.
Mhm.
I think the difference, or at least the way that I understand it and the way it's been explained to me, is that when you like, let's say you have a challenging conversation with somebody and you go to bed and you're kind of dreaming about it, and the next day you wake up and you go, oh, if I go back to them and I say blah blah blah, and you have that kind of solution,
Mhm.
like, you've processed through it and you've gotten to the other side. But with trauma,
Mhm.
it kind of gets stuck in that emotional state. And there may not
Mhm.
be words for that prefrontal cortex, that logical V8 place, to
Yeah.
kind of kick in and help you make sense. And with EMDR, it helps unlock what's stuck and allow it
Mhm.
to process through to get to that place of, okay, this, whatever
Yeah.
the this might be. And I
Yeah.
think that's That's my understanding, but we don't 100% know exactly what's doing it.
Yeah.
Uh,
When I was in one of my trainings on it in grad school, this one supervisor who was doing the training on it, and he like played a video, like it was, I forget if, I think it was like an old news recording, and this lady was sort of
Mhm.
like explaining what it was, and he was like, Ignore all this. This is not like
Right.
it was supposed to be a therapist who like specialized in it at the time, and that probably given would have been like 20 years ago probably now. So we probably said a lot of stuff that we now are like, back then he was like, just this is he actually said it's bullshit. She was like, it does things on each side of the brain.
So part of it is what I'm guessing is each side of the brain. That's the bilateral. So your brain's
Mhm.
divided into two hemispheres.
Yeah.
You're actually stimulating them kind of opposite of each other
Mhm.
through the stimulation. So the eye
Mhm.
movement or the tappers, and even you and I had talked off mic. I've done it with olfactory cueing where I'm using essential oils
Yeah.
specifically to cue certain things,
Mhm.
and I use essential oils in a certain sequence to do that so
That's
that
so
it's like
cool.
there's that because
Yeah.
our our olfactory bulb, so when you inhale, our olfactory bulb actually loops around and is right there with the limbic
Yeah.
system. So if you
Do you
think
remember,
about,
speaking of commercials, the scent is the scent's closest tied to memory.
what that's going to say is that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Like
Yeah.
scent is so
Yeah.
closely tied to memory, which is why scent can be such a trigger
Yeah.
for trauma survivors. So I
Absolutely.
think in particular that I've worked with, I work with an organization called Got Your Six, and they provide service dogs free of charge to veterans and first responders with PTSD, and they are amazing.
I
And
love
they are
that.
in uh the Midwest.
They'll get an extra brownie point for me if they get those service dogs trained by inmates. Those are like my favorite.
Well, right now they
Love
get
those.
the service dogs trained by volunteers.
Okay,
Uh
well we love a good volunteer. Thank you,
yes.
volunteers.
So so my part of what I do with them is teach them how to add that aroma into their toolkit as
Mhm.
another coping strategy, but also how to do a reset. In that whole process, I had to figure out like why is this working in the brain? But the
Yeah.
thing that they would talk about is, and I had to be careful because certain essential oils don't smell like certain things to me. But for a
Mm.
veteran, it was very interesting. There was one, and I had to figure out how to swap it out and what to use instead because
Yeah.
they all said to me, it smells like burning rubber. So I took it to my husband, and he goes, oh, it totally smells like burning rubber.
Wow.
And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah. And so
What
I,
did it smell
but
like to you?
to me, it didn't smell like burning rubber.
Okay. We just
It
know
just,
that it didn't. That's not what it
it
was.
smelled kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't even know at this point. And so I figured out kind of how to do that, but it is for them that was a trigger because of the burning rubber and having to set tires on fire when they were
Yeah.
serving in an active combat zone, those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
that was huge and I'm like this makes sense, but that's a trigger. So it's having to
Yeah.
know that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because so I appreciate you saying that because when you said it smells like burning rubber, my brain was like, oh, combat, like immediately, like
Right.
in different environments. So when you're doing the olfactory stuff, the essential oils for bilateral stimulation, you don't want a triggering one. You want one that'll just kind of highlight both sides of the brain.
So what it does is it actually goes into the limbic system through the olfactory bulb, which is kind of right
That,
next to it. I see the image in my head, which is kind
yep,
of what I'm
I know.
tracing
I know. Yeah.
in
We'll
the
find
air.
an image and maybe we'll just put it up. Like I'll edit it or so. Oh,
Um,
do you have one? You
I
got
do.
everything.
So
Ooh.
there's the olfactory bulb. So like you breathe in, I don't have a nose, but like you breathe in through your nose to the olfactory bulb and
Mhm.
it kind of like comes right into this area, this
Yes.
orange parts, the limbic system. I want to say maybe here is,
Yeah.
I think the amygdala, if I'm
Yep.
pointing
Yep. You are
correctly.
pointing. That is exactly where you're
Um,
pointing, which is where we get our like strong emotions like fear and stuff, right?
correct,
Yep.
correct. And over here somewhere in this area.
Hippocampus. No, you are remarkably on target. I can't.
Okay. I
You
kind
should
of
be
have an
so proud
idea
of
where my
yourself.
hand should be
Yes.
on this.
Right on the hippocampus, which is tied to memory, right?
There you go. And then hold on. So here-ish
Yeah.
somewhere.
You are
Well,
literally pointing at the spot of the thalamus. I feel like you're pranking me right now. I feel like you can see this.
I
You're
really
doing great.
can. But I know this is so funny. I know where my wrist should be in relation to the edge of this chart.
This is so
So over
impressive.
here somewhere, I think is,
Stop it. You just cheated. Sorry,
am I
you just did
close?
the every time.
Okay. So,
Okay.
well,
Yep.
part of it, okay. So I will be honest, like, so I know, like, hand wise,
Yeah.
that this should be,
It's
and
the
it's,
amygdala.
it's
Yeah.
the amygdala because it's actually the white paper part is resting on the first knuckle of my middle finger. So when I extend my my pointer finger, I know it should be there, and I know that if I slide over to my middle finger, that that's where the hippocampus should be. So it's really just spatial reasoning.
Witchcraft.
Totally spatial reasoning. That's all that it is. And then I'm like, all right, well, if I go north and back
You're gonna go
a
north.
little,
You're
that
right on.
should be.
Yep. Oh my
And then
god.
if I
Stop.
come down to kind of like where my ring finger's bent and come over, um, then it should be close to, now I can't remember where I am.
Nope.
Um,
You are on. Where would you guess? Now I'm gonna make you guess. If you are you trying to be on the hypothalamus because that's exactly where.
so yes, the hypothalamus, but over here somewhere is your V8 prefrontal
Yep.
cortex. So I don't
Frontal
know
lobe.
exactly where that is.
I mean, it's that general area. Yeah.
It's over here somewhere.
Oh, all that right
So
there.
that's the little brain diagram that I have.
Yes.
Um, but that's part of it is how it all loops around and how it's so strongly connected. So with that, I have some clients who get too anxious of like, am I holding my head straight enough? Am I doing the eyes right? And they kind of are
Mhm.
getting too into
Yeah.
the overthinking.
Yeah.
And I
Especially
have
if you
some
get those
clients,
perfectionistic clients of trying to do it right.
right. And so I have some who they can move past that, but I have some who are like, just give me the oils. Like, let me smell this stuff. Let me use that. Um, and then I have some clients who,
Is that all they're doing? Are they doing like are they looking at it while using the oils or?
as of right now, I just have them smelling the oil.
Okay. Okay.
And so I use the different scents
Mhm.
as more the stimulation versus, um, so if you think about it, like with the bilateral stimulation, you can turn the ball up, right? Or the
Yes.
tappers up. So it could be going like
Yes.
slower if you don't really
Lower.
want it to be stimulating and you want it to be calming, right? So if I want it to be calming, it's a calming smell versus something that would be more activating, that would be going a little faster where you're processing material. So I'm still working on it. I'm still figuring some of it out. So
Still super cool.
yeah.
So, okay. You and your clients are doing this while going through memories. And one of the big things in terms of like structure of what EMDR would look like is that you meet with them and you're not immediately doing this. You're developing a relationship first because that's kind of what matters most, right?
Right.
And then you do a lot of prep work, correct?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of prep work. So it's making sure that they're not going to get flooded, that they have, um, in EMDR, it's considered resourcing. So tools that they can use to help them. So again, kind of like with the veterans, we will use different things. So, how to do a reset, in a certain sense, like our uplifting. So if you think about orange, right, when you peel that orange and you get that little burst, a lot of people think that burst is juice. And it's really the actual essential oil from the orange peel. And so that's why it's kind of on your fingers longer, right?
Mhm.
And you get that kind of, for most people, that's a really kind of refreshing, uplifting scent.
Yeah. I know
There's
Young
that,
Living calls it like energy or whatever. Like they'll have like an energy one that has a bunch of citrus stuff or what.
right. So there's energy, I do talk to people about like where does it come from? Because some people are like, and I'm like, no, like it's not some magical witchcraft kind of thing. But a lot of my folks like that because it's easier and it's just a matter of being like, and kind of processing through it,
Okay.
and then going back
Yeah.
in,
So
kind of
that's
going
part of the
through.
soothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so some of it's soothing, some of it's a little bit more activating. There's a blend that I specifically use that I make myself that has certain components in it that are soothing, but also like grounding, calming, soothing, but together they also access. or seem to be accessing. I don't know how to get people, like, I don't know if we could PET scan people and see what's happening in their brain at the same time to compare like this with traditional EMDR with like sleep studies, but that
Yeah.
would be awesome.
Yeah.
So some of
Okay.
my clients are totally down with it, love it. Some of my clients are hardcore, like, just give me the ball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's that kind of thing of shifting and making sure before we get to phase 4, which is that reprocessing, that they have things in order. You
Yeah.
know,
Can we talk about the
um,
phases real quick for someone who may not understand, which includes
um,
me? I mean, I know of them, but yeah.
yeah, no, totally fine. The EMDR protocol is an 8-phase approach. And so you have history taking and preparation and resourcing before you even get to reprocessing. So it's a little tricky, I think, to wrap your head around initially, because phase 1 and 2 may take longer.
Mhm.
Phase 3 is really like what's the memory that we're working on and kind of piecing out all the parts that go to that. And then phase 4, right, you go from that treatment planning into, okay, we're reprocessing. But in that reprocessing, you might do phase 4 and be in phase 4 for, a couple weeks, a couple months,
Okay.
depending on the level of and severity of trauma. It could even be a couple of years.
Oh.
For some folks, it could be you're in phase 4 and then you're in phase, and in the same session, it might be 4, 5, 6, and then you're kind of closing out that
Yeah.
session,
Super
7.
client led, right? Like you're really going
Right.
off of where they're at. Yeah.
Right. And I think it depends. So if you're doing like a traditional therapy clinical hour, 50 to 60 minutes, you might not get through the whole thing. But if you're doing an intensive and you're working together for 3 hours, you might do 4, 5, 6, 7, close out. And then phase 8 would be the next meeting where you're doing that reevaluation and touching base of, hey, what have you noticed kind of in life in general? And also, what have you noticed based on whatever the material is that we've been working on? And kind of touching base. And then that's the, I hate to say the jump off point, but it's what's happening, how disturbing is that? And what do we need to go in with to continue that reprocessing in the
Yeah.
next session? And so that's kind of, so for a lot of folks, it's like 1, 2, and even into 3 might take a little while to do. Once you start to get into like the reprocessing, you might keep going on that for a while. And then like things will settle and it's like, oh, well, my distress score feels neutral or kind of like it's at a 0. Or I love my one client. It's like it's at a 0.12. It's at a point
Oh, yeah.
two two six seven. Like, right. Um,
Very precise.
right. Um, so it's kind of like figuring out what that is, but it definitely is like, okay, and then you might go to the next thing and kind of go from there. So
Hmm.
there
Because, and
is
when you say the next thing, is that the target? Because I
the
remember
next
that being
target,
a
the next
target.
memory.
So, like, so you're going memory specific, right?
So the
Like,
standard protocol is memory specific. There's
okay,
there's a multitude of protocols.
protocols. Okay.
So there's like protocols for anger, there's protocols for depression, there's protocols for anxiety, there's protocols for OCD. I'm trying to think of like
Uh,
other things off the top of my head. Drug and alcohol, like substance abuse type stuff. There's so many. And I think that's a huge part of it is that it's flexible enough to be able to do things. Um,
do we
we
know much about the
time
research of those protocols? Like, are they pretty decent? Like, in terms of effectiveness?
are decent.
Are. Okay.
Um, are there other protocols out there? Sure. Do I know all of them off the top of my head?
No,
No.
I wouldn't ask that of
Um,
you. Which ones do
there
you do?
I do RTAB, GTAB. I have done the OCD, the drug and alcohol, the anger, depression, anxiety.
Can you just tell me what R-tab and G-tab are? 'Cause
Art, that's totally fine. RTAP is recent traumatic episodes protocol.
that
So
just makes sense.
something, right. And GTAP is the group protocol. So if you have, let's say, like a natural disaster
Okay.
and you have a bunch of folks, you could do recent, you can do recent one on one, you could do recent with a group setting. With the group actually is easier because you are giving them kind of a space. So it's like almost like a special worksheet, but it has, so they're moving their hand and watching their hand go back and forth between to actually create that bilateral stimulation. And it's really amazing to me how well that actually.
Yeah.
So, like, if we think like hurricane, earthquake,
Yeah.
tornado, fires, things like that, like, those are things we could do immediately to help decrease. And especially the like recent traumatic episode, that's great because EMDR really isn't meant to be used kind of like at the trauma, right? So the RTAP is really helpful, like within, I want to say it's like 2 weeks of the trauma take place.
Wow.
So it's really kind of getting into that. So you don't, the memory doesn't get solidified
Okay.
and get stuck. So it's being
Yeah.
able to help process and move it uh,
Mm-hmm.
much more quickly.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure I didn't get us off track with that because we were talking about the phases, right? And I mentioned the target. So with the traditional trauma focused EMDR, we're going off of target memory potentially at a time. And it might be that one memory, once that is addressed, can kind of have like a big enough of an impact where somebody might be like, I'm good. We can run through the phases. If they find that it comes up, like it's still ongoing, we're picking a different target memory then?
So the target memory, you really want to try as a therapist to pick the one that's going to be either the earliest or the
Most
most impactful.
impactful. Yeah.
And so they're kind of what you're looking for. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the so it's that. So when you're doing that reprocessing, I kind of think of it as like old school Pac-Man. I feel like everybody's gonna know like my age based on these
Oh,
references.
I love it.
Um,
My son loves Pac-Man. What are you talking about?
Okay, but it's that whole idea of like Pac-Man's kind of going along and it's okay, well, we ate that memory and that memory and that memory, and it's clearing these memories. And
Yeah.
sometimes they seem to not be related in any way, shape, or form. And so in that reprocessing, there's a check-in. So it's like you're reprocessing, and then I'll pause. And I normally ask my clients to take a breath. I do it with them so they don't feel weird about it. I pause the stimuli and I'm like, take a big inhale, like, and exhale, let it out and like let it go. What are you noticing? And I don't say a whole lot. And then I think is one of the things with most of my clients, I caution them, like, I'm not going to talk a lot when we're reprocessing. I need to not get in the way. And so they'll tell me, oh, this and this and this and this. And sometimes I'm going, how did we get over there? And I'm like, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I just let their brain go where it needs to go. And usually by the time we get done, I'm like, oh, this is what they were doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
And they're talking about those things while the ball or
So
whatever
no,
it
I
is
I
going. Oh,
paused the ball.
oh,
So
okay.
they're not talking while they're processing. They're just kind
Okay.
of giving me usually a brief summary. I have had a couple of clients who are like, "Hold on," and they give me every detail of everything, so it makes it a little slower
Mm,
in the reprocessing. And then I have other clients who they've worked with me long enough where
mhm.
they'll say things like, "It's moving, let's go." And I'm like, "Okay."
Okay.
And I have no idea. It's kind of flying blind of
Yeah.
what they're reprocessing. And we'll do rounds and they're like, "It's moving. I gotta go." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'll turn it back on.
Because
And we get to the
because
end of
they're
the
like
session
feeling something.
because the materials reprocessing and they've worked with, I mean, these are people who've worked with me for a couple of years. So
Yeah.
they know what it's supposed to look like. And then we'll get to the end of the session and they go, "Okay, here's everything I need to tell you." But they have the awareness that if they switch too long,
Uh-huh.
telling me what's happening, they're going back into that prefrontal cortex. And
Uh-huh.
they know they want to stay in that limbic reprocessing to move the material. So they're actually really have that awareness. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. And we have enough trust in each other to be able to
Okay.
do that. For a lot of my clients, they can feel it and they can see it.
Wow.
I think I have two clients who actually can't visualize things.
Mhm.
So that it's a little bit more challenging, not undoable. So like those are folks who if you say, tell like picture an apple. right? There's no picture in their brain, right?
Yes. Yes. I've heard of
Right.
those people. Yeah. Yeah.
Versus folks who are like, well, I have a green apple and I have a red
Mm-hmm.
apple and
Mm-hmm.
like, right.
Mm-hmm.
And they can tell you like this apple has a leaf on it.
Conceptually, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Like some people are like Apple. Like there's no visual.
Yeah. And so it's a little trickier with those folks. But for folks who have that visual, the directions actually are like imagine it either like on a movie screen kind of up in front of you where you're watching it. So you're not reliving it, you're watching it. Or if you're sitting on a train kind of watching the window and seeing all the scenery go by, watching that way. So those are the two that I tend to go to for how to explain that piece. So it's not a reliving it, but it's again creating that distance of you're
The
watching
distance.
it and noticing
Yeah.
as your adult self seeing what happened to you when you were, let's say,
Yeah.
a little boy or a little girl.
When you didn't have that fully developed prefrontal cortex.
Correct. And so that's that
Yeah.
processing part. Most of my clients are going to say, I'm noticing blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. And so, if they are too kind of disconnected or whatever, sometimes I'm like, when you think about where we started, what are you noticing? And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like this. Okay, go with that. When you go back in, start there. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of the direction they go. And so once they get to a place where they're like, it's neutral,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, okay, is there anything else coming up? How does this new mindset or this new positive statement about you in that situation connect? Clearing out anything in the body and being able to kind of get to that place of like, okay, like I'm
Yeah.
actually feeling pretty good. And so when I talk about the next thing, most of my clients have kind of CPTSD type stuff. So they're not coming in with what I consider an encapsulated trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
for some of my folks, an encapsulated trauma might be like traumatic grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
loss of a loved one unexpectedly or in an unexpected way.
Or
And
like just
so
a really like visceral way. Yeah.
that might be so the two that I'm thinking of that popped into my head were both traumatic grief. And they came in and we that was all we focused on. That was all the work they wanted to
Yeah.
do. And we processed through that and it was maybe 12 to 15 sessions
Okay.
and they were done. And that included like the intake and the kind of closing graduation session,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Huh.
it went pretty quickly and they had a good amount of relief. And they were people who were experiencing kind of nightmares and intrusive thoughts and things like that around
Mm-hmm.
these deaths and stuff. And so it really cleared those things out for them. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to miss the person who they
Yeah.
lost,
Oh
but
yeah.
it
Yeah.
does
Just like
shift it back
processing
to a
maybe
normal
like
missing.
an abuse of somebody, you're not like just fine with it. Right.
Right.
Like, yeah, it doesn't sound like it's removing every single like feeling or, connection that you have to the rest of the world. But
Right.
it, like you said, turns it down, gives you space, and you can navigate the world differently.
Correct. It's not Men in Black. We can't just like zoop and like erase your memory.
Oh man. These references are bringing me so much joy right now.
I'm
So
glad.
great. What does he say? Hey, take a look at this. Just like say that. Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
I
so.
was fascinated by that when that came out.
Well, I do have clients who think that that's
That
what's
that's
going to
what it
happen. And
is.
I'm like,
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't,
think
or it's not a mind
helpful.
eraser.
That's a
It,
super helpful, like clear thing to clear up. Yeah. Good point to make.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's so sweet.
it doesn't erase it, but it does settle it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very aware of the time.
That too.
I can talk to you forever. This is so much fun.
I could talk to you
You
forever too.
you are a treasure, a joy. Do you feel like this is a good switch to wrap up questions? Are we at a decent
Sure.
stopping point? Okay.
I think so.
We can always have you back.
Well, I would love to come
Happy to
back.
have you. Yes. Where are you licensed?
I'm licensed in Pennsylvania, Vermont, New Hampshire. I'm looking into Iowa currently, and I'm packed in I'm not even sure how many states
Yeah,
that
that
is.
would
So
I think
it's
it's supposed to be like 42.
so it's I mean if you Google if anybody wanted to Google like the pack map that
Yep.
would say all the
That's
states. So
just,
I
yeah.
currently
It's
see
such, it's a
people.
great visual. It just pops
Yeah.
as soon as you literally just Google SciPac map and it pops up like
Yeah.
in all those. Yeah. It's
Because off
helpful.
the top of my head, I'm like, there's only a handful, I think,
That
left
don't now.
that
Yeah.
don't.
Which is really
Um,
nice. Yeah. Do you have openings?
I probably have a few openings, but I have a couple of people who are likely to be graduating soon.
All right.
So I think there may be a few more openings.
Okay. And you mentioned your theoretical orientation. Is it primarily psychodynamic or is there more?
I would say I'm probably more eclectic.
Okay.
I pull
Yeah.
from a lot of different things depending on what the client needs. The psychodynamic piece was I really wanted to understand how I actually got into it because my mentor was talking to me about certain things and I was like, how do you know how to ask these questions? I love her dearly. She's in her 70s now. And in my head, the beauty of my brain is that everybody is my age. So even though she's in her 70s, I'm like, yeah, in my brain, you're not. You're like 40.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
It's fine.
we're all the same age. I still think I'm 28. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But I also think that I should have the same knowledge base that she has. So that's actually how I ended up doing the advanced psychodynamic psychotherapy certificate program because I was like, I want to understand the impact of our relationships. And it's so, we could talk about this another time, but how it impacts with trauma, especially,
Mm-hmm.
and what that push pull is in the attachment piece and those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Do you take insurance? You
I
said
do not. I do
you do
not.
not primarily, right? Yeah, partly like you said, because it's such a pain for some of this more complex work that you do. And what's your current fee?
So it depends. So I do have a couple of sliding scale spots. They're currently full, but my hourly rate is 265.
And you said you're 100% online, except for the medical reason with that one person, correct?
Yeah.
What do you nerd out about?
What do I nerd out about? Um, integrative health. I really nerd out about integrative health. Like that is
Yeah.
to the point where I actually am pondering going back to school for an ND, which would be a naturopathic doctor. Um, because I can't pick the thing that I want to nerd out the most on. And so
Yeah.
that covers all of them.
Yeah.
So,
You're like, it'll just give me everything. One
right. So
stop
I was like,
shop.
well, if I'm going to invest, do I do all of these things or do I just do this one thing that covers all of those things? So, and my husband just shakes his head because at this point he knows and he's like, you just have to be in school.
You should have to be in school. I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he did ask me to take this year off before I opt into any other programs.
Take a break, please. Do you
Yeah,
have any pets?
I do. I have two rescue dogs.
Oh.
Yes.
And so anything that you're super into right now that you're watching, reading, doing?
I love to read. So
No.
I'm always reading something. Um, oh, I wish I could remember the book series. I want to say the author is Fiona Baker, possibly.
I know that name.
I think it is Fiona Baker, and
Nice.
it's like a beachside series, and it's this
Fun.
imaginary island, Marigold Island. I'm on the third
Hey,
book, and
nice.
it's super cute because it's kind of like it's kind of nice because it's these two friends who the whole series starts with two friends who reconnect coming back home to the island. The one's husband has passed, the other one is in the process of like determining whether or not she wants a divorce. And they buy this kind of dilapidated inn and fix it up. But then it's
Oh.
the impact on all of like the family members around them and all
Hmm.
these different dreams. So it's this very entrepreneurial spirit, which I think I connect strongly to,
Hmm.
in addition to, you know, just these really kind of I want to say like it's a nice, clean kind of romance. It's not, it's just like the actual connection and then the dynamics of these relationships and how they're supportive and how they handle disagreements and things like that. So that's probably my thing right now.
I love it. I love that so much. That's so cool. And are you a coffee or tea person?
Probably more tea. I've never
Mhm.
had coffee in my life.
Well, I would probably say tea too. Probably more tea. I have to go with tea because I really actually never had
Never
coffee
had
ever.
coffee. No.
What?
Oh
Yeah.
no, interestingly, I just found a really great recipe for a high protein hot chocolate that's you
Ooh.
make it using ironically bone broth.
Yeah,
Um,
I could see
and
that. Yeah.
my husband is like, this is the most amazing hot chocolate ever. So he's
Mm.
kind of excited that it's gotten chillier.
Mm.
Because he's like, all right,
Yeah.
you
Well,
gonna make that?
do you even like hot or do you even like tea, or are you more of a hot chocolate, like other warm beverages then?
I do like tea. I
Okay.
drink
Okay.
like green tea, spearmint tea,
Okay.
I guess Ticino, like the
Oh.
dandelion stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Okay. Nice.
yeah.
And what would you say is your least favorite misconception about the work that we do, you do?
That we all sit around like bobblehead dolls and nod our head because some people do,
The
but I
blank
think
slate thing?
yeah, I think
Mm.
the majority of us in the field are not just nodding along to whatever a
Yeah.
patient or client is saying. I think we're really doing pretty intense work with folks. And I feel like that doesn't always, because we can't really talk about it, that doesn't always come through in how society represents us, like through
Mhm.
like social media representation as well as like Hollywood representation.
Right. Right. Well, Kim, where can people find you?
My website is bertrandpsych.com. So all together. So that would be the best place. And then I'd say if they're Googling anything, it would be Bertrand Psychological Services
Okay.
because most of my stuff redirects to, unfortunately, if you're searching my name, it goes to some actress.
Oh, really? When I
Yeah.
searched, I think I searched um, before we started recording, like Kim Richards therapist, and I got like three, like at least. So it's a yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So, so Kim Richards, Kimberly Richards,
Kimberly Richards. Yeah.
um, psychologist probably would be another search term, but
Okay. That might be helpful.
my website's www.birchrunpsych.com.
Okay. And so you just go straight there.
Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Kim Richards, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time talking with you.